Hi there, I'm Sara Sheehan, and welcome to my podcast, Transformational Thinkers with Sara Sheehan. Today, I'm talking with my friend Sri Chellappa about his focus on talent development, employee engagement, and performance management, and finally, coaching, in all that he does as co-founder, president, and CEO of Engagedly. And so, Sri, I would love to hear a little bit about the backstory that led to you creating Engagedly.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for having me on your show. Really looking forward to having this discussion. It's been a few times we've chatted, and it's been a good conversation so far. Regarding Engagedly, my background actually led me to Engagedly in many ways. My background was in technology consulting. I helped organizations with developing and deploying different automation approaches to their processes as part of my role as consultant with Big Five back in the day. And then I ran a IT consulting firm with other partners as well. But we did a lot of work with healthcare companies in that as well. And one thing I noticed a lot during my experience, and I've done this consulting work between the two experiences about 18 years at that point, and what I learned a lot was that many of these organizations that we worked with, or at least tried to work with in some cases, had situations where the employees didn't feel like they were being appreciated. They didn't feel like they were getting the right roles or getting the right responsibility, or the management was listening to them, or didn't have clarity on what the organization was going. So there's a lot of uncertainty that was giving them frustration. And I think that was very pervasive back then. It's gotten better over the years because we have gotten a lot more employee centric in the last few years. But Engagely was born out of that gap we saw in the market, that organizations could use a platform to drive better engagement within their organizations and build better teams and more engaged people that will ultimately perform better for them in the long run, with those little investments. And obviously, it's not just the software that can solve the problem. There are a lot of cultural changes they have to make, management approaches they'll have to change. So that was the initial impetus for starting Engagely, because the name itself, as it implies, is to have more engaged employees in the organization. So we started that about 9 years ago, and over the years, we've realized that engagement is not just about having just a badge given to somebody, or an award, or a plaque, or foosball tables, and free lunches and things like that. It's about every part of the touch point an employee has in their journey within the organization, starting with the recruitment process, on the way to onboarding, and then training, and their experiences with their manager, the kind of psychological safety they have in the organization, their performance discussions and performance reviews, all of that.
Absolutely.
So Engagely became obviously more than just a platform that was driving engagement through rewards and recognition and social connections. We became a lot more than that.
Excellent. And as you look at how the world of work has changed in the last few years, which it's changed quite a bit following the pandemic, what do you think is critical for employers to get right in the workplace to attract and retain talent?
I think the two biggest elements that the management has to do better, and I'm seeing some directional movement in the positive direction there, is build better transparency and trust with their organizations. And I know they are very loaded, generic words,
Mm-mm.
seem like platitude, but they really are extremely important. And what that transparency means is not just saying, we're a transparent organization. You can come and talk to me anytime and things like that. But it's actually saying, we as an organization stand for this. We as an organization have this goal, and we as an organization have these challenges, being transparent about the problems and challenges,
Mhm.
being also celebrating successes along the way, and then keeping an open, almost like an open book for the employees to participate in and look at. And that's the transparency, right? Which is
Mhm.
saying, this is how we did last quarter. Here's where we lost a few customers, we lost a few employees, we screwed up here, we didn't do a good job. But then also here are things that are going well, and being transparent about it, and not trying to you know throw it under the rug. The trust part comes from having the culture where you are allowed to have dissenting voices, because some of the best progress comes from disagreements that teams have within, so they can have an open disagreement, agree to disagree, and move on, right? So Jeff Bezos actually talks about this in many of his podcasts, is you can agree to disagree, but then you can disagree and commit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And on the transparency side, I would even offer that there are quite a few companies that have started getting extremely transparent about pay practices, where it's part of the actual recruiting process where they say, hey, we have really specific pay prescribed for a particular role at a particular level that's very open and transparent to employees as they come in, that no matter what gender you are, you would get paid the same, or your
Yes.
level of experience.
Yes.
And so I do think those kinds of things that employers can do make a huge difference. The comments that you have on trust are just tremendous, because I think that employees have gotten to the point where they definitely lack trust in the employer. And so anything that a leader can do to be more trustworthy, to build more meaningful relationships and staff, I believe it will bode well not only for the company's performance, but for individual performance too.
Yeah. And trust is built through actions, right? Your words must translate to actions.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are saying we are a transparent organization, but you then don't share any data, or you
That's right.
try to build an organization where there's backstabbing, and you tolerate that,
Mhm.
or you tolerate toxic environments just because somebody is extremely good at delivering results
Mhm.
but is causing a lot of frustration within team members,
Yeah.
and you live with it because you're like, well, I can't let this person go or move this person to a different role because it's going to affect our results overall. But it is affecting your results because you're losing people and their trust into the organization. So trust and
That's
trust
right.
kind of go together in many ways, to be honest.
I couldn't agree with that more. Couldn't agree with that more.
The one other aspect I would say about trust is, when you say we care about our employees, how do you show that? Like, we are employee centric. Okay, how does that reflect? We are a diverse organization. We support
Mhm.
DEIB initiatives. How are you reflecting that within your organization? Are you taking
Right.
specific actions to do that? And that's how you build trust, by
For sure.
backing your words with actual actions.
Most definitely, tracking your words with actions and having some sort of a KPI or a measure to demonstrate it from a data perspective that you can share later, which I think, Shri, you even mentioned in an earlier comment as well. So that is absolutely right on. I think talent based data and analytics are critical to
Yes.
develop that trust and transparency. Moving on, in terms of performance management, because I know Engagedly does have performance management functionality, the process of performance management has had mixed results in the workplace over the years, and many companies have opted even to remove the process from its previous incarnations. So I would be really interested to hear how it is working for you, how that functionality is working for you. I know that there are companies that have removed performance evaluations and end of project evaluations, as well as end of performance year evaluations, which seems like a lot to remove just to get out of the it's almost causing a brain response that's negative in the person that's receiving the feedback. So, what's your perspective on continuous performance management these days?
Well, let me actually back up that a little bit. There was an article that was written in HBR in 2016. I believe it was written by Anna Tavis and Peter Capelli, if I remember right, around the case to I can't remember the exact title of the article, but it was a case to do away with performance reviews or change the performance reviews to some effect like that. That article actually got a widespread read everywhere. People started talking about it in big, and that drove a lot of changes because what the authors, Anna Tavis, who's been on my podcast as well, she's phenomenal. She's a professor at NYU. What she said is that, if I remember, is that the annual performance reviews are useless and they're actually having the opposite effect of what they should be having. And in most cases, that is actually true. That started the whole revolution of people wanting to not do annual reviews or doing away with annual reviews. Adobe started a big trend around that, and then Deloitte followed, and then there were a few other companies that started doing that. And then that has kind of come a full circle to some extent, where more and more companies did that, and then they started doing reviews again. And I think the problem was not necessarily whether you should do or not do annual reviews. It is what you do in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big one. And that's where the continuous performance review concept comes into play. If you remove the performance review process
Mm-hmm.
and you don't do anything else, that doesn't solve the problem. It actually makes it worse as well. If you only do performance reviews, what you're doing is you are looking at having a performance conversation only once a year, and we know that, and at least most humans, including myself, have short term memories better than long term memories. So we remember more of the stuff that happened last few weeks versus the thing that happened all year long.
Right.
And some of the things that we should have had conversations with them about months ago are not happening now because we probably forgot about it, or there's only so much time you can have a discussion about it. So annual performance reviews without having ongoing performance reviews is a very bad practice in general
Mm-hmm.
because you are missing out on having ongoing discussions throughout the year. I think my personal philosophy is that you kind of need to do both. The annual review is really recapping your entire performance year's discussions. It is not a discussion that should be generally be a surprise. I was
Right.
talking to someone.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I was talking to somebody else earlier today, a CHRO of one of the manufacturing companies, and she was saying her in her first role when she got a performance review, she had to rate herself, and she was completely surprised when she heard what the manager rated her after the discussion. And that should generally not be the case if
Right.
you've been having ongoing conversations, right?
If you're in tune with the person you're working with,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of obviously ongoing conversations, ongoing performance reviews, but they have to be meaningful and they have to be some
Mm-hmm.
and evidence based to some extent. So that's why we have the whole concept of real time feedback in our system. You have concepts of goals and OKRs that have check ins on a weekly basis, or you review them every quarter and you're keeping tracks of that. We have a tool in our system called meetings where you can generate and schedule one-on-one meetings with a standing agenda with an employee and a manager. Those are all different avenues of having these performance conversations with your people,
Mm-hmm.
and they should be driven by the data. So this is what we planned on doing for this quarter or this month or this week. How did we do? Where are the obstacles? What challenges are you facing? And then give them coaching on where they might be struggling with. And those kind of discussions, if they happen more frequently at the end of the year when you're having annual review, you basically have all this history that you can bring to the table and say, hey, over the last year,
Right.
this is what happened, and we both know about it because it also it's in the system now. So it's not based on some notes we took on a notepad somewhere. A lot more effective
Right.
performance conversations.
And I think that is very compelling and interesting. And are you finding that many of your active clients are utilizing the functionality?
Yeah. So if I look at our customers, we have about 450, almost 500 customers at this point, I believe.
That's impressive.
Oh, thank you. What we have seen is that almost all of them do some sort of an annual or a biannual, or some of them do quarterly reviews as well. So they do that. And about 60 to 70% of them do goal setting and do goal check ins and goal discussions. So and then there's also concept of check-ins where they can do a check-in with their employees, so they're doing that as well. So I'm seeing it's fairly common
Mm-hmm.
at this point with our client base.
That's fantastic. It's good to see a little balance coming back into the equation, where people see value in keeping the conversation moving forward. And ideally, if they're really thinking about providing feedback that can be constructive and helpful.
Yeah, I think the balance is important
Hmm.
because annual performance reviews got a bad rap because you are not doing the other things in the middle. The answer is not to away with it. And by the way, you can do away with it as well. I'm not arguing one way or the other. But what I am arguing for that those ongoing conversations throughout the year that you cannot do away with,
Hmm.
that you need to still do, whether you do annual reviews or not. Some organizations want to do annual reviews because that's the way they can draw a line in the sand and say this we are closing out the year, this is a review so we know who to promote, who to give a raise to, and then who we keep in the organization, who we don't keep in the organization, things of this nature, right? So they have some kind of a process that is driven by this performance review.
Hmm.
So some organizations do it for that purpose. Some organizations do it because that's the way to also say, okay, we close out this performance year, so let's start the new year, and that's a clean way of doing that. But the best organizations that do it is the ones that use that as a mechanism to say, let's recap the year. Let's look at the growth areas based on the last year and your aspirations where you want to go. And let us talk about that. So using that performance review,
That's very powerful.
using the
Yeah.
performance review conversations and turning them into a more effective looking forward conversations, I think that's what the effective organizations have been.
That is definitely a step change in performance management that I would love to see take hold. And so, Shri, I know that you're a strong supporter of executive coaching and you've developed part of your platform for mentoring and coaching. What kind of results are your clients experiencing that use that?
So there is mentoring and there's coaching, though I will make a slight differentiation between the two, although the lines do blur. So coaching is really focused on performance of that individual. So if you are a manager, you can be a coach to that employee to coach them to do better in their role. But it'll be hard for you to be a mentor because you cannot disassociate the employee's performance and the reporting relationship from you because that is real. A mentor usually is somebody who does not directly manage you and is
Right.
not focused on your individual work performance and on specific KPIs.
Hmm.
They're focused on your growth as an individual, growth within the organization, growth even in your personal life as well. So for both of these things, we actually have tools for that. Now you can use the same tool for either one of them. It's really depending on the relationship between the two people. The mentoring is typically done in for multiple use cases. In some organizations, they use it to get somebody who's joined new in the organization, get them to get used to and acclimatize to the culture. Really, a way for them to imbibe that culture, understand the different power centers in the organization, because you need to know that, as a new employee, you need to know how to understand and play nicely within that organization. So a mentor really helps them guide that. So we have a lot of clients using that for mentoring. Executive mentoring obviously is slightly different. That's more around how do I be a better manager, be a better leader, be a better organization builder, things of this nature.
Hmm.
In those cases, the mentor is somebody typically outside the organization
Hmm.
who doesn't have a bias of the organization, and you can openly talk about your challenges, and it gets lonely on the top, as you are
For
probably
sure.
aware as well, right? Because you may have a lot of frustrations and challenges and even doubts in your own abilities for sometimes, and you can go there share that with the employees all the time. You'll demotivate them
Oh, definitely
and
not.
potentially even lose trust in the process.
Right.
So you kind of need an external coach, external mentor to help you bounce those ideas, even talk about things that you would never say out loud with your people in your organization, because things that you might be thinking about that could be so out of the realms of reality that you can talk through those ideas and see what might work for you.
Right.
So from a result perspective, to your question, people who have everybody should have mentors. In fact, I was talking to somebody last week who runs mentoring programs for different organizations in the UK, and he was talking about, which I agree with as well, is that not only should you have one mentors, but you should have multiple mentors for different reasons.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more.
And from a result perspective, it is proven by data in our case, as well as in our customers' case, as well as in research studies, that people who have mentors and coaches perform better, they stay in the organization longer, and they get promoted more frequently than the other ones do.
That's right. That's right. I feel like executive coaching is very similar in results because you have a structured process that allows you to ideate and collaborate in a safe place
Yeah.
and allows you that opportunity to be creative and think of new solutions that you may not
Yeah.
in any other type of situation. Do you have any case studies or client success stories that you could share that demonstrate the results and transformation that Engagedly is delivering for clients?
Oh, there are several. There are. We did a research study. It's been a little over a year, so we need to rerun that research study again. We saw that over 60% of our customers, 60% of the time, or 60% more, I should say, customers saw increase in engagement in their organization.
Excellent.
There was a massive lift in manager employee communications and recognition across the organization. And those two elements, for example, and there are more, are direct directly correlated to company performance through all the research, right? So there's been immense. Now you have to do it right. You could use our tool
Sure.
and just do annual reviews and do it the wrong way and get the wrong results.
Of
But
course.
if you follow what we believe is the right approach, which we were talking about, the results are quite impressive, actually. With just those little tweaks.
It is mind-boggling to me that having the structure of a platform like yours, along with some solid guidance on how to employ it in real conversations with employees, can make such a difference. So I do applaud you, Sri, for all that you are delivering
Thank you.
to help your clients transform and engage their employees more. You, Sri, mentioned earlier in our conversation that, of course, you have an established podcast, People Strategy Leaders Podcast. Besides AI, what are the most interesting emerging trends in the workplace that we need to solve for that you are hearing about through business or your podcast?
That's a good one. So AI obviously has a huge impact in many ways. The other one that I'm hearing a lot about, not hearing, but I'm seeing also, is that because of the whole move to work from home for a lot of organizations, the organizations have become a lot more distributed because people have moved from bigger cities in many cases and not coming back. People have started working with other people in other countries because they're like, if I can work with somebody in New York or Chicago or wherever the other person is, I can do the same thing with people working in Mexico or India or Middle East or wherever the other people are, or Europe. So that has created a little bit of a challenge where now you have teams where a part of the team is in the same location and the other part is distributed across the world. So
Mm-hmm.
now managing that distributed hybrid structure is a challenge for a lot of managers and a lot of leaders
Mm-hmm.
because they're not used to it.
Sure.
There are organizations and people who are used to it. If you are in consulting, for example, you're quite used to it because you're used to traveling and working remotely and working with your managers remotely. Your team was always distributed. You saw them maybe once every 2-3 weeks in an office because they're always on the client side.
Right.
But if you were a company that for years worked together and you didn't have necessarily a formal processes because you could just go and tap on somebody's shoulder and ask a question, that doesn't always work anymore when you have teams distributed.
Right. That's a big change.
And I think that's a huge change for at least for knowledge workers.
Mm-hmm.
The knowledge worker services, professional services, things of this nature, huge change. And managers have to be trained on how to manage teams like that because what can happen is that there is what another thing called proximity bias,
Mm-hmm.
where you'll start biasing towards people who are close to you and you'll promote them more, you will give them raise more, you'll give them more responsibility and more important projects. But the person who's sitting, 2 time zones away from you may not get the same level of attention and focus, and they might get disengaged in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So there are challenges that they have to manage. If you're on a conference call together as a team, and three of you are in the room, and the other three are on a Zoom call somewhere else, the interactions you're going to have are going to be different. The body language you pick up are going to be different. And so those are some of the challenges that organizations have to face. And how do you run an unbiased environment where everybody gets equal opportunity and equal attention to some extent?
For sure. I definitely think proximity bias is real, having worked with so many distributed teams in my career. And
Uh-huh.
I think one of the biggest success factors that I experienced in working with a distributed team is making sure that I get to know all of the team members, no matter where they are. Spending time with them and getting to know them does make a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah. And some people can't adjust; they just can't. And some people adjust really well, and some people are used to that environment. So
Hmm.
there are changes, and the people have to be trained to do that. I think that's a big one. Apart from that, the other big one, I think, is driving. This is something I was very interesting data that I saw. The unemployment rate is still pretty low,
Hmm.
despite
It
all
is.
the attempts by the Fed to increase it so that we can have lower inflation. But if you actually look beneath the data, the unemployment role is low in many of the roles where you don't think of them as critical, or think of them as hard to get, right? There are
Hmm.
more frontline workers, restaurants
Right.
and things like that, manufacturing. But if you look at technology roles, the unemployment rate is not that great. It is a little bit higher there. It is harder to find a job in many of those high skill knowledge worker space to some extent. And I think it's because of part of it is because of AI is displacing a lot of jobs. I think it has already started doing that, and a part of it is also because we have, as organizations, have become, especially technology organizations, have become a lot more efficient because they hired too much in 1920, sorry, 1920, 2021 and 2022 and 2023. They started laying off people, as you saw with massive layoffs at Tesla and Google and
Hmm.
Facebook and Microsoft and all the big ones, literally Amazon.
Right.
Everybody laid off people, and they're still doing it. There's another round of layoffs at Tesla going on. There's another round that's coming out at Google and Amazon. So
Peloton's laid a lot of people off. I've heard
yeah,
there are quite a few additional layoffs going on in the big four world. So it's
it's still a big issue. I think
still a big
that's gonna
issue.
rattle a lot of tech workers, especially if you're in the tech side of things. I think that's a big change, at least from a specific industry perspective that we are seeing. There's one generational issue that we are facing is that we just have fewer workers in the middle.
That's exactly right. I was actually going to ask you because I was sensing that part of the low unemployment number is based on the fact that we have such a large workforce that is retiring right now. And we do not have as many people joining the workforce
Yes,
based on
yes,
age.
yes. I'm looking at the data here. So we've lost like 3% of workforce. Just lost it.
Hmm.
We
Just
don't have
lost.
to.
It's
We
just
have 3%
vaporized.
less more people working now than they did
Right.
3 years ago, and that translates to several million, by the way. So it sounds like 3 million, but it's several million people that are just not available to work. So now you have to figure out how to do more with less, but also means that you can't deliver services as effectively
Hmm.
anymore.
Well, it might mean you have to think differently about what you do, what your offerings are, and how you interact with your client to deliver an excellent experience. It might look a little different.
Yeah, yeah, and the ones you do hire, you have to now really pay attention to how do you keep them.
Yes, absolutely. To retain and promote talent.
Yeah.
And so, Shri, just to double click on the People Strategy Leaders podcast, could you characterize some of the things that you've learned and all of the conversations you've had so far? Because you've talked to quite a few people at this point.
I think the common theme I'm hearing a lot more these days than before, which I have been talking about for a while, but I thought was just mainly me, but it's not, is the fact that we need to support and empower and develop more middle managers. They are the pillars of your organization. And if you don't, you can have great leaders, you can have really good frontline workers or people on the individual contributor levels. But if you don't have a strong cadre of middle level managers, your first line managers, second line managers, and third line managers in some cases, your organization cannot thrive
I couldn't agree with that more.
because they are the ones implementing your strategy. Leaders are talking about it, but they are the ones implementing it. And
That's right.
if you don't figure out a way to develop them and make sure they are the best managers you can build and get in your organization, you're you're kind of in trouble as an organization. You can't scale. That's how you.
Well, you're not heading in the right direction, that's for sure. We're seeing in a lot of services that are selling successfully that leadership development is on the rise as a positive,
Yes,
good experience to provide your middle managers, especially, so that you can grow more leaders at more levels of your organization. So in 23 and 24, we have started seeing an uptick in those kinds of services sales, and those clients are experiencing significant improvement in performance.
yes, yes.
So, very interesting and compelling comments from you there, Sri. What are your big aspirational goals? What would you love to be able to accomplish or achieve
As an individual or as a leader?
as a president, co-founder, and CEO of your company? What would you like to be able to achieve?
So the as a leader, I think one of the big things I would like to grow personally into is how do I be a better communicator to the organization? To me, I can have all the great ideas, but if I cannot communicate and implement those, and that comes through largely through communication to that first level, second level, third level of management, if I can't do that effectively, then my all my ideas as a leader won't come to fruition. So I need to continue to develop myself to do a better job at that. You know, there are there is no lack of great ideas. You can read them, you can Google them and read them and get all the ideas you want through listening to podcasts like these or listening to TED talks and YouTube and reading HBR articles and books. Ideas are all out there and they're free. The most successful leaders are the ones who are figuring out how to pick the best ones that will work for them and their organization, and then drive the implementation to its logical direction and conclusion. And I think that's a big area of growth that I have been focusing on personally. As an organization, we want to build a platform that helps organizations connect their people strategy to employee aspirations, because when they both get aligned better, people find fulfillment in their work and organizations achieve their business goals. And that's what we want to do as a platform.
Absolutely. And so, how would you answer that question from a personal perspective? Do you have any personal aspirations that you are developing goals around right now?
Yeah, so our personal goal is to with our organization is to get and build a platform that actually delivers a lot of insights so that we can build better middle managers for our clients. We can build better HR processes that delivers on the promise that HR makes to their organization or the organization makes to their people,
Mm-hmm.
and have a platform that can actually implement their strategy. I think if more effectively using AI, using workflow automation, using better user experience, and delivering on that. So basically, it becomes like an enablement platform for their strategy.
Mm-hmm. Well, Shri, I am so impressed with you and the Engagedly organization and the value that you're delivering for clients. I know that the best is yet to come, and you'll keep refining your offerings and your solution and make it even more valuable for clients.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate your kind words.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Is there anything on your mind today as you think about current challenges in the business world?
The I think we have to become live the words we speak. As when we say we are people leaders, we are people centric, we care about our people. If you hear all these words, we have to live true to those words. I think leaders, managers, directors, VPs, everybody has to live those words, and that
Mm-hmm.
requires people to build organizations that are more transparent and trust, because we cannot. I don't. And we moved away from the paradigm of tell me what to do and I'll do it. Is to let us work on this together. I want your ideas, and your ideas are as valuable as my ideas. Let the best idea win. I think to that model, moving to that model, will have better outcome, and you'll have better organizations.
I definitely believe that collaboration and innovation will bring tremendous results and growth.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that lives in the space of growth and comfort do not coexist.
No, no. The I actually wrote that in one of the internal memos that I write some occasionally to my people. I said growth happens at the edge of discomfort. So if you're comfortable, you're probably not growing, and that's true.
That's right.
If you're working out, that's what resistance training is, right? You're
Absolutely.
uncomfortable.
You have to find a way to make yourself uncomfortable so that you can grow and get stronger. And so, Shri, tell me, how can our listeners find you? What's the best way for them to find you and reach out to you?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Sri Chellappa, I believe, is the handle. Or if you type in Shrikant Chellappa, my full name, you'll probably find me on LinkedIn. And I also have my podcast, People Strategy Leaders podcast, which is available on all podcast channels and also videos on YouTube. And obviously, you can learn more about Engagedly on engagedly.com, engagedly.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time today, Shri. I
I
very
appreciate
much
it.
appreciate it.
Yes, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. What a pleasure it was to talk with Sri Chellappa, co-founder and CEO of Engagedly. Here are some key takeaways from our thought-provoking discussion today. Embrace ongoing performance conversations. Annual performance reviews might be on their way out, as they often fall short in driving meaningful change. Instead, focus on regular, evidence based performance conversations that occur throughout the year. Cultivate a transparent and trust based culture. Organizations thrive when built on transparency and trust. Embrace open communication, encourage diverse voices, and ensure actions align with stated values to foster a collaborative and innovative work environment. Harness the power of coaching and mentoring. Investing in coaching and mentoring programs can lead to improved performance, higher retention rates, and increased employee engagement. Empower your workforce through mentorship for long term success. Join me in exploring these transformative ideas and more on the latest episode. Let's shape workplaces that inspire growth and excellence together. Thanks for joining me today. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments.